Good afternoon. I am Ronaldo McKenzie, and welcome to another episode of the Neoliberal Round podcast. Today, Florida Senate passes GOP-backed ban on teaching students to feel guilt for history. Again, on the Neoliberal Round podcast, we will be discussing Florida's Senate decision to pass a GOP-backed ban on teaching students to feel guilt for history. So, the Florida Senate voted on Thursday to ban public schools and private businesses from teaching people to feel guilty for historical events committed by people of their race. Addressing a top priority of Republican Governor Ron DeSantis. According to CNN, the bill, which passed a GOP-controlled state Senate by a vote of 24 to 15, would also prohibit instruction that says certain races or sexes are privileged or oppressed. The legislation previously passed the State House 74 to 41 and now heads to DeSantis' desk, where he is expected to sign it. The crackdown on certain teachings about race in Florida is part of a national effort by Republicans to remove critical race theory from school curricula, even where it doesn't exist. The movement has mobilized conservative parents and voters and has turned schools into the front lines of a national cultural war leading up to the 2022 midterms. Now, I posted this article on my blogspot, ronaldocmckenzie.blogspot.com, and I also posted this on my Reddit and asked the question. Now, let me ask a question. What does this mean? The fact that Florida Senate voted Thursday to ban public schools and private businesses from teaching people to feel guilty for historical events committed by people of their race. The question is, what does this mean? I thought that people developed feelings of guilt and so on based on their human consequences or consciences and consciousness. However, does this mean that we cannot teach the truth about what actually happened in the U.S. racial history? Now, if they're saying that teaching about how white people enslaved and discriminated against black and brown people is tantamount to teaching people to feel guilt for historical events, then it would mean that teachers can no longer teach the truth about the past. It would mean that they can teach about the nice part, or a diluted version that continues to stroke the white race's egos over another race, a black race that still bears the scars of their past, while exposed to a story advocated by this law, if that's the meaning, that minimizes said scars so as to satisfy the children of the white race's guilt and save them from the pain that their forefathers caused, that the children of slaves still bear. Again, let me ask the question, leading from Florida's decision to ban public schools and private businesses from teaching people to feel guilt for historical events committed by people of their race. What does this mean? I thought that people develop feelings of guilt and so on based on their human consciences and consciousnesses. However, does this mean that we cannot teach the truth about what actually happened in the US racial history. Now, if they are saying that teaching about how white people enslaved and discriminated against black people and brown people is tantamount to teaching people to feel guilt for historical events, then which the historical event we're talking about is slavery. And the lynching of black people. And the withholding of certain civil rights before the Civil Rights Act, and the ability to vote and so on and so forth. Then it would mean that teachers can no longer teach the truth about the past. It would mean that they can teach about the nice part, or a diluted version that continues to stroke the white race's egos over another race. A race that still bears the scars of their past, while exposed to a story advocated by this law, if that's the meaning, that minimizes said scars, so as to satisfy the children of the white race's guilt and save them from the pain that their forefathers caused, that the children of slaves still bear. And just so you know, before I share with you what people are saying about Florida's decision to pass this ban, there is one thing that we need to also bear in mind, that even after slavery, and even we had the continuation of, whether through de jure factors or de facto factors, the continuation of discrimination meted out to the black race or black and brown people. And even just recently, with the Black Lives Matter movement, demonstrating or protesting the killing or police brutality of certain people. We're talking about black people. We're talking about Breonna Taylor, George Floyd, and so on and so forth. Black people were still continue to experience discrimination in terms of arrests, in terms of violence meted out to them, and the systematic abuse of black people, even after slavery. So, even though we are having this discussion today about Florida banning teachers or putting a ban on teaching students to feel guilt, we need to remember that even after slavery, and even up to civil rights and after the civil rights, the discrimination of black people and the continuation of white privilege continue in this country. Yet we are here discussing the banning of the banning of the ability of teachers to teach actual events of what happened, because certain people today don't want to take responsibility or continue to bear the shame of actions they say they're not responsible for. But they have responsibility. They have responsibility to ensure that effective actions are taken today to mitigate the continuation of the effects of their forefathers on these same people. And not only that, they have a responsibility as well, if they want to dissociate themselves from the actions of their ancestors past, to continue to advocate for the improvement of these people's lives and to ensure that these people are treated fairly. Even when But what we had happen is that black people were demonstrating in the streets last year against police brutality, and even after police brutality that is being meted out, there were those people, the inheritances or the legacies or the descendants of these people who carried out slavery were against these people, were against Black Lives Matter, people who were calling for fairness and so on. So we have to also put this into perspective. If it is true that people now are not to be held responsible for sins of the past, then the question is, what are people now doing to dissociate themselves and to ensure the improvements of the people who their ancestors have enslaved and who are still bearing, and these people who are still bearing the effects of slavery? That is what is important here. But what are people saying about Florida's decision to pass this ban? We will share these comments with you, and I actually have about 15 of these comments. We will share them with you after these messages. Welcome back to the Neoliberal Round podcast. We are discussing Florida's Senate decision to pass a GOP-backed ban on teaching students to feel guilt for history. And this segment, we will share with you what people are saying about Florida's decision to pass this ban. Now, firstly, one person says, if you identify with your racist ancestors, then that is a problem that you have brought into the school building. It's not something that was caused by how a teacher presented and appropriately designed and delivered anti-racist curriculum, regardless of whether it came up in history, biology, English, or any other subject. However, because these kinds of laws are dangerously unable to distinguish between erroneous thinking brought to the table and erroneous teaching, the best answer here is that everybody should leave Florida immediately. I believe there is plenty of room in the Dakotas, for example. Bring layers. Of course, I had asked the question, and many persons, I had over 66 responses. But I'm only sharing with you 15, and the question was, now let me ask a question stemming from this Florida ban, or Florida Senate decision to pass this ban. What does this mean? I thought that people develop feelings of guilt and so on based on their human consciences and human consciousnesses. However, does this mean that we cannot teach the truth about what actually happened in the U.S. racial history? Now, if they are saying that teaching about how white people enslaved and discriminated against black and brown people is tantamount to teaching people to feel guilt for historical events, then it would mean that teachers can no longer teach the truth about the past. It would mean that they can teach about the nice part, or a diluted version that continues to stroke the white race's egos over another race, a black race, a race that still bears the scars of their past while exposed to a story advocated by this law, if that's the meaning, that minimizes said scars so as to satisfy the children of a particular race's guilt and save them from the pain that their forefathers caused, that the children of slaves still bear. So I just shared one response. Listen to another response. What an ignorant and racist mindset. These are kids and are easily influenced by what a teacher says to them. Really? Another person responding to this second comment. Really? Because anytime I mention current events in class to draw a parallel with what we're learning in history, I have a kid that complains about Biden and how he has dementia. I have never done, and I apologize about that, but I have never done a lesson over Biden. I don't give any of the kids my personal opinion over Biden or any other president. So where do you think he got that from? Because it wasn't me. After class, if I do mention current events, I check with my mentor and ask if there were any issues with what I said. She hasn't had an issue. The kid is like 12 or 13, by the way. Here is a fourth response. White male public school teacher here who taught African American history in Florida this year. White male public teacher here who taught African American history in Florida this year. This is what he says. This law sucks. Sue me. I am a teacher in Florida. I don't have any assets. I start the class with a simple thought experiment based around a simple question. Should German students learn about the Holocaust? We don't inherit the sins of our fathers. If you are white and look around in AAH and don't see any amazing people that make you proud, that modeled how to stand up to help with their fellow man and aren't paying attention, while my class isn't focused on white men and white women, there are lots of great white people to admire in the course. John Brown and General Sherman are some of my personal favorites. But others too, like Rabbi Herschel and his allies who marched alongside MLK. Here is a fifth respondent. German students are required to learn about the Holocaust and also required to visit the death camps. At least, that was part of their history curriculum 6 years ago. Here is a sixth respondent commenting on this. As are Israeli students. I guess this person is Israeli. Not sure. Here is a seventh respondent. It isn't that people are teaching things so that others feel guilty. There may be a person or two with some sixth sense of things, but some kid may feel guilt by learning things about their culture or heritage or ancestors. That is tough, and they should be helped to work through that. Dumb question. Has anyone actually read the bill? Face value. Why would we teach anyone to feel guilty about their ancestors? Is that part of the curriculum anywhere? Deeper level. This is just another conservative culture war victory by crybullies that doesn't actually change anything at all. Here is an eighth comment, an eighth respondent or commenter. This is the opposite of empathy. This bill is the opposite of empathy. Empathy lights up our brains with connections and stimulation. Brains that don't feel empathy become stimulation seekers for life. addictions, drama, etc. When children learn empathy, they don't tend to unlearn it because it feels so right, so healthy, so powerful to care about the others or to care about others. This, and I quote, right to no guilt. Shh. Again, this same person, this 8th respondent, said this right to no guilt X, and I say X here because she uses a language or a word that many people might find disrespectful, or it might put you off. So I want this to be a clean version of my podcast. So I won't use the word that begins with SH. Okay? But according to this respondent, the person said, this right to no guilt, is literally society poison. This damages everyone. Even the kids, they are trying to protect from guilt. If you can feel proud to be an American for all the good things, you can feel guilty for all the shitty things. And I dare not to say the word out. So this is the 8th respondent. I'm going to reread it again because I paused several times, so you might not get the gist of it. So let me read it again. This person, in response to this bill, is saying this is the opposite of empathy. Empathy lights up our brains with connections and stimulation. Brains that don't feel empathy become stimulation seekers for life, addictions, drama, etc. When children learn empathy, they don't tend to unlearn it because it feels so right, so healthy, so powerful to care about others. This right to no guilt is literally society poison. This damages everyone, even the kids they are trying to protect from. If you can feel proud to be an American for all the good things, you can feel guilty for all the shitty things. Here is the 9th respondent. Jesus, Florida. Take it down a notch. It's obscene how much damage one state can do to its people. Let's fast forward to 5 years from now, when Florida's graduation rates have plummeted. Schools are off for random days of the week due to the teacher shortage, and colleges are not accepting Florida grads anymore due to their lack of knowledge and poor testing scores. What's next for the Florida GOP? I assume the anti-trans bills and anti-abortion legislation are probably next on the docket. When is the bill to force mandatory religious education electives in public schools? Seriously, what is going to stop these maniacs? My only comfort is knowing it is currently restricted to Florida only. Here is the 10th respondent. They passed the anti-trans bill yesterday that bars teachers from discussing gender and sexuality in the classroom. They passed the abortion ban last week. The GOP, a government so small it can squeeze past the cervix. That's what this person said, number 10th. Here's an 11th respondent. I'm sure some of these things will end up in the Supreme Court. I'm just hoping that some blue states start passing copycat laws but targeting conservative ideas. Here is the 12th respondent. The kids should be reassured by their parents that they aren't responsible for what their ancestors did, and that there are good and bad people in every race. There were white abolitionists and the civil rights movement activists. They can be good people and learn from what people of the past did. You know, I have to pause. This 12th respondent, I have to read it again because I think I can associate or identify with this particular comment. The person said the kids should be reassured. Instead of passing a ban that tells teachers that they cannot teach students to feel guilt, which is actually controlling the curriculum and pulling the critical race theory curriculum from off the race theory books and subjects and so on from off the curriculum. Here is the person saying, no, what we should do is that we should reassure the kids, or the kids should be reassured by their parents, that they aren't responsible for what their ancestors did, and that there are good and bad people in every race. There were white abolitionists and civil rights movement activists. They could be good people. They can be good people and learn from what people of the past did. And here's the 13th respondent. I went to school in the Deep South. We got to learn about how the civil rights or the Civil War was really about states' rights. And slavery wasn't as bad as Hollywood made it out to be. That was cool and all. But now when children have access to infinite information and can see that all that was a bunch, and can see that all that was a bunch of BS, they're just gonna ban any talk entirely. It's sickening to see the depths of lies these people are willing to go. A 14th respondent said, they're just following Texas's nonsense. A 15th respondent says, one of my students told me their black art teacher pointed at their table of 4 white girls and told them, they are the table with the most privilege. Here's a 16th respondent. I know it's out of context, but I seen the class. There's literally a table right by his desk with 4 white males. So let me repeat. So a 15th respondent says, one of my students told me their black art teacher pointed at their table of 4 white girls and told them, they are the table with the most privilege. And another respondent, following up on this other respondent, said, yes, I know it's out of context, but I seen the class. There's literally a table right by his desk with 4 white males. The 17th respondent, I recently boarded a plane with a bunch of students from Florida. All I have to say, atrocious behavior. I also noticed a sense of entitlement from those kids. Now I know the root of the problem. But I have to let you hear this particular respondent, the 18th respondent, and then I will wrap up. This 18th respondent says, the easiest way to get around this bill or this ban as a teacher is adding a disclaimer and discussion, or the easiest way to get around the feeling of guilt from teaching actual events that happen in history is to add a disclaimer, for teachers to add a disclaimer or discussion at the beginning of the lesson. That lets students know they are not responsible for the past, but are responsible for the future. That can relieve that feeling of guilt, while simultaneously empowering them to create change in our society that won't systematically discriminate against people of color. Again, reiterate that they are not responsible for building the systems they were born into. You could even add the kicker that none of us asked to be born, but now that we are here and see injustice everywhere, it is our duty to do something about it. What do you think? Would this hold up in the court of law? My reply: good point. Further, instead of finding ways to prevent guilt feelings, why not explore methods that ensure each student can create a future that does not repeat the past? Isn't that the best way to prevent or respond to feelings of guilt? For passing this bill would seem as an attempt to forget the past so as to cover guilt that has not yet been resolved, since talking about the past still breeds guilt among the legacies of children of the past. Further, how can we lead into the future with a brighter and better prospect without learning from mistakes and ills of the past? Again, one person said that the easiest way to get around Florida's bill that banned teachers from teaching students to feel guilt, instead of banning or coming up with a law that banned teachers from doing so, they're saying that why not add a disclaimer or a discussion at the beginning of the lesson that lets students know they are not responsible for the past, but are responsible for the future. The future that can relieve that feeling of guilt while simultaneously empowering them to create change in our society that won't systematically discriminate against people of color. Again, reiterate that they are not responsible for building the systems that they are born into. You could even add the kicker that none of us asked to be born, but now that we are here and see injustices everywhere, it is our duty to do something about it. What do you think? Would this hold up in the court of law? I responded by saying, good point. Further, instead of finding ways to prevent guilt feelings, why not explore methods that ensure each student can create a future that does not repeat the past? Isn't that the best way to prevent or respond to feelings of guilt? For passing this bill would seem as an attempt to forget the past so as to cover guilt or cover up guilt that has not, or cover up guilt feelings that has not yet been resolved properly and effectively, since talking about the past still breeds guilt among the children of the past, or the children now, who are the children now, the descendants of the forefathers who are responsible for the heinous crimes of the past. Further, how can we lead into the future with a brighter and better prospect without learning from mistakes and ills of the past? Let me also add that, many of you might be familiar with Sigmund Freud, who is responsible for the psychoanalysis theory. And Sigmund Freud talks a lot about our consciousness. He talks a lot about the fact how human beings have a tendency of pushing difficult or unpleasant situations in the unconscious as a way of dealing with it, but oftentimes, if we don't resolve these things properly, it would manifest through bad dreams. Yes, it manifests through certain feelings. And he actually talks, if you read Sigmund Freud, he talks about the tendency that human beings have to project. In other words, say for or the tendency that we have to apply defense mechanisms when we feel cornered, or when we have unpleasant situations in our lives. And one of the defense mechanisms is that we hide. We use mechanisms and methods to hide and to cover up things in our lives, push it to the back so that we can not remember it. And in a sense, this is what this bill seems to lead to. A mechanism by Florida to push into the back burner, into the subconscious, into the unconscious, to cover up a particular unpleasant reality, which is not. And if you study psychology and clinical psychology, one of the ways you deal with unpleasant occurrences is by talking about it. We talk about the empty chair method of resolving issues, psychological problems, and dealing with issues. One of the ways we're dealing with unpleasant situations is by talking about them honestly. Because if we are unwilling to communicate effectively about what's going on in our lives, then we cannot resolve issues. And so I hope that as a people, we can work together to resolve issues of the past, and we can continue to improve each other's lives. There are those who are already doing it, but there are some people who feel that this bill is warranted, and there are those who feel that people go beyond goes out of their way to make people feel badly about the past. But I hope that we have an honest, a dignified, and a professional, and a respectable conversation about this. And as a country and as a people, we can all become more united. Because I believe that the problem of the future and the problem of now is not really an issue just as race. But it's more than that. The neoliberalism goes beyond racial issues. Race is just one method that society or system use to confuse us so that the few will continue to have benefits over the many. But I mean, there are several issues going on in society today. But my ultimate goal and my dream is that we can all live together as one. And whatever that means, does it mean that we would cover up the past in a sense? Or does it mean that we just discuss issues of the future and passing legislation that helps to improve the lives of those people who are affected by the past? Thank you so much for joining us. And you can actually join into the discussion here by going on my LinkedIn, the Liberal Commentary, and read the discussions and actually clicking on the link and posting your comment about your feeling towards this Florida ban. You can also get excerpt of this discussion on ronaldocmckenzie.blogspot.com, and you can also click on the link and it will take you to the discussion group where you can post your comment. Now, this particular program, we are not liberal and we're not conservative. We're not GOP and we're not Democrat. What we are is we are independent in the sense that we hoping that people will come together as one. And at times I may disagree with Biden, and at times I may disagree with the conservatives. Okay? But my hope and my dream is that we're able to come together and demonstrate a level of understand each other, and think about how we can improve each other's lives. And I hope that is the intention of this bill. Continue to send me your comments. ronaldocmckenzie@gmail.com. Take care and have a great day.